My name is Michelle Easton, and I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Forest Hills Council of PTA and PTOs. We are the hosts for this event. First of all, I would like to thank Nagel Middle School for allowing us to utilize their space this evening for this event. And I would also like to thank my co-chairs, Tracy Hubner, Amy Heiss, and Jenny Gavin, in helping make this night possible. I would also like to thank our candidates for their participation this evening. They are Patty Taylor, Leslie Rasmussen, and Tom Turchiano. So these three candidates are running for 2 open board positions on the Forest Hills School Board. On Election Day on November 5th, you will have the opportunity to vote for the candidate of your choice. As an audience member, this evening, you have the opportunity to submit potential questions for the candidates. On your tables, you will find, in the stand-up holder, there's the Ohio School Board Association expectations for a school board member. There's a flyer with a brief description of all 3 of the candidates. And then there's also index cards and pens for you to write your questions down. There will not be any live questions this evening from the audience. Our moderator, Dr. J.T. Spence, will be doing all of the question asking. All of the questions that are submitted will be asked of all 3 candidates. The questions that you write down on the index cards, we have runners from Forest Hills Council that will be going around and collecting them and then taking them to myself and Jenny Gavin, and we will be putting them together in themes and then passing them off to the moderator. The moderator makes the choice as to what questions are going to be asked. We have a limited amount of time this evening, excuse me, so we may only be able to get through 10, 12 questions. In order to allow more time for questions, we ask for you to refrain from applause in between each of the candidates. You might love what they're saying, but we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to share as much as they can about themselves. We would appreciate audience members and candidates treating each other with respect and listening to what each of them has to say. And at this point in time, I'm going to turn the program over to our moderator, Dr. J.T. Spence from Thomas More University.
Thank you for allowing me to participate in this aspect of democracy tonight. I have a couple of short comments to share, and then I'd like to get right to the questions. So tonight we are here in the spirit of democracy, as exemplified by one of my heroes, Aristotle, several thousand years ago described a good citizen as one who was engaged in democracy. Healthy democracy respects the debate on issues and the opportunity for those in the democracy and the community to consider what is the community good. We should applaud those who stand for office. It is a sacrifice that they make for the community, and through their engagement, we hopefully become the better citizen and model for others in our community. Thank you to our 3 candidates tonight for their willingness to take on a leadership role in their community. I will begin with the questions. The first question, the opening statement, excuse me. The opening statement will be made first by Patty, then Leslie, and followed by Tom. Patty, would you like to begin?
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Hello, and thank you for coming to see us tonight. Please think about what your top priorities are as you listen to us this evening. My priorities as a parent of children in our district and as a potential board member are: number 1, to provide challenging, top-notch education that positions students for success. Number 2 is to provide a learning environment that promotes achievement and encouragement. Number 3 is to provide the best possible education without putting our district in financial jeopardy. And number 4 is to be honest and transparent with the state of our district and the decisions we make going forward. How will I accomplish this? By continuing to make sure the curriculum addresses all required subjects and allows for individualized learning techniques where possible. by continuing to offer as many accelerated courses of study as possible, by providing as many resources as possible to assist students when they struggle, by providing as many elective-type classes to promote well-rounded students in a sense of belonging. To do that, we need to take a hard look at everything we spend money on and make sure the priorities are funded. If you spend money you don't have, you put everything in jeopardy. My motive for running is pretty simple. I honestly want to set up the district for academic and financial success by funding our schools sufficiently to attract and keep quality teachers and programs. If I'm not elected, my life goes on and that's perfectly fine. But what about you and your children's education? Do you feel the district is fine as it is, or do you expect more? What do you want to see happen going forward, and who do you think can bring it about? I think I can bring a fiscally conservative perspective to our district to make sure our educators are paid, that we offer as many programs as possible to our students, and we don't jeopardize our financial future. This upcoming vote is not really about me per se. It's more about what you as parents and taxpayers want to see happen at the school district level. Where do you want our schools to be, and who best can drive those decisions? I think we need thoughtful, resourceful, and experienced people making decisions. Decisions should be made after research, collaboration, and deliberation. I think I have exemplified those traits, and I appreciate your consideration tonight.
Leslie, would you like to go?
Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I wanted to start off by just telling you a little bit about myself, and then maybe talk about the reasons I want to run. First of all, I'm not an Ohioan by birth. I am, in fact, from Texas. But my family and I have made Ohio our home for the last 6 years. We have 2 little children, an almost 2-year-old and a 6-year-old in first grade. So we're just coming up in Forest Hills. And I am so excited to be up here and look forward to helping drive success for the next umpteenth years. We have a very, very vested interest in this district since, we're just getting started. My little 6-year-old insisted that I bring our matching folders tonight to hold my notes. So I've got my hologram and bananas there. She thinks that's important, but when she comes home, she doesn't talk to me about folders and stickers. She talks to me about the things she does in her specials. She talks to us about math. She was afraid of math at the start of this year, and now she quizzes us in the car. She does that because she's receiving quality learning at Forest Hills, in Maddox Elementary specifically. I am so proud of what has happened in that classroom. 3 months into kindergarten, she was reading. Now, I'm an educator by trade. I've been in education for over 13 years. I started out as a substitute teacher, and this might sound crazy to some people, but I love the middle school grades. That was my bread and butter. I just love being around those kids. And for a long time, I thought that's what I might do. But as the years went on, I just fell in love more with the research. And I had many questions, and I wanted answers. And the best fit for me was to go on into higher education. And that's what I did. I ended up at a community college in Iowa where I taught AP English to high school students in a rural town, Humboldt, Iowa, if anybody's familiar. I know you are. And I loved it. I'm passionate about it. I'm the only one up here who has been the boots on the ground, that is in the classroom, that knows the outcomes of K-12 education and knows what we have to preserve and how to preserve it. I don't look at numbers and say, awesome, we hit that magic mark. That's not what it's about. I can look and say, how about we redirect this resource or that resource and cut from here instead of there, because I know what it takes, because I'm in the classroom every day. So I just want to help. That's all it boils down to. And I think I have a very valuable set of skills that would work quite well with the current makeup of the board, and I look forward to pursuing that. Thank you.
Tom?
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you all for attending the Meet the Candidates Forum. I'd like to just take a moment to thank the Forest Hills Council for arranging tonight's event. There are a lot of details and plans that go into executing an event like this and getting all the pieces together. I'd like to thank Michelle, Amy, Tracy, and Jenny for putting a lot of hard work into this event. So my name is Tom Turchiano, and I'm a 19-year member of the community. My wife and I chose Anderson Township in 2000 as our home. I grew up on the west side of Cincinnati, attended Catholic schools. And when we got married, we were thinking about where do we want to start our lives. And my wife was living here in Sherwood, and we decided that, hey, Anderson is a great place. Why? Because we love the schools. We heard so many people talk about how great our schools were, talk about how great our parks were, and that we were a safe community. So it's like the trifecta. Why wouldn't you want to live in a community like Anderson Township in the greater Newtown area? So my kids both attended Summit Elementary. My daughter is now a sophomore at Anderson. I have a son who's a 2019 grad of Anderson High School. My wife works for the district. She works as a para in this building. And we love our Forest Hill schools. This is a great district. And I became interested in being involved with helping kids out and being part of that type of activity. So as my kids were growing up, I got involved in Forest Hills youth football. I spent 4 years on that executive board. And it was really about how do we make these programs better for our kids? How do we impact the lives of our kids? It's all about the kids. So I spent 4 years there. I also spent 4 years as the president of our swim club. Again, it's how do we make the lives of our kids better? What do we do? What kind of programs and things to make their lives fun, more recreational? Be outside, don't be inside. And so I did that for 4 years as well. In 2008, I thought I would start to get a little bit more involved in the community, and I was asked to chair the 2008 Anderson Park District levy. And so that passed by a great margin. And so after that, what else do you do? Well, I'm on the Anderson Board of Park Commissioners, been there for 7.5 years, and now I want to make a statement and get on the school board to make our schools better, to make us more fiscally responsible, and just to make another impact in our community. So I thank you all for being here tonight, and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Thank you to our candidates for opening remarks. We have a question to begin the evening for each one of the candidates. We'll start with Leslie, then Tom and Patty. The question is, what do you believe are the most important characteristics of an effective school board member? Do I need to repeat that?
No, I got it.
Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, I think an effective school board member has to understand the state funding model for schools in Ohio. We cannot keep passing the buck and making excuses. That is the root of the problem. And an effective board member knows that and will be advocating not just here, but at the state in Columbus. Throughout this process, I learned that our superintendent is in Columbus weekly fighting this battle. And I'm appreciative of that, and I want to do whatever I can to assist in that effort, because all of this is a Band-Aid, and it's not because of some felonious acts. It's because we have an issue at the state level, and we need to attack it there. So, first and foremost, we have to understand that. We can't ignore it. No one on this stage can promise any of you that we will not have levies, because that is not the state we live in. So that's the first thing. The second thing I think is incredibly important is getting somebody to understand that what happens in the classroom is not a business. It's not. Education is very fluid. People learn differently, teachers teach differently, and we need to get those needs met by empowering our teachers and staffs. Those are the two biggest things I have when it comes to being an effective school board member.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes, well, thank you. In order to be an effective school board member, first you do have to understand the finances, and Leslie is correct that it is impossible to say that we'll never come back and ask for another to be in that situation just because of how the state funding is today. So I would say that our job and duty is to, one, balance the budget and make sure that we work diligently to extend the life of a levy. The typical levy cycles are 3 years. Well, let's continue to work diligently to push that and look at the opportunities to change how we do business and how we do things. That's one of the most important factors that I look at. But secondly, and I think probably the most important part is, let's make sure that we're providing the right tools, programs, and things that the kids need to be successful in life. Not just those that are going on to college and to the four-year universities, but also those that are looking at the trades, those that are looking at school in a different form. So to me, those are two of the very important things that I think a school board member needs to consider.
Thank you. Patty?
What I think is you need to plan for success, right? You got a lot of kids depending on you. That does mean you have to keep all the balls in the air. You got to fund it. You got to pay for teachers. You got to pay for programs. You got to pay for everything, right? So if you miss on that, you miss pretty big, right? And everyone suffers. So I am not an educator, but I do this at home. I don't spend what I don't have. You've got to plan to cover everything, to provide everything that you need. That's what I intend to do, is just to make sure. And I'm not going to say we don't ever need a levy, but we do need to plan before we get behind. And that's what I'm saying, is we need to be a proactive board instead of a reactive board. I want to plan to pay our teachers. No one wants to go through this cycle. I have lost a job through reduction in force. It is not fun. It's ugly. It's just unsettling. Nobody wants to do that. But you get a plan for everything. Plan as best as you can for everything. So that's what I mean by that. You have to be resourceful. This is public education, right? So you have to figure out, what are my priorities? What am I going to spend money on? Make sure your priorities are best for the students as best as you can, and then you go from there. You have to be honest. What I want to bring here is, where are we? What is the state of our situation? What are we going to do as a community to get where we need to be? And then diligence. This is not easy. It's going to take time. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Second question. Tom, please be the first one to respond, and Patty, then Leslie. What do you see are two of the major strengths of the school district at this time?
I think the first thing that our school district does is, I think we provide an unbelievable experience for our kids. Educationally, here in Forest Hills, people that come from other communities, they want to move to Anderson Township and Newtown because of our schools. So I think our schools are phenomenal. So as far as academics, I think we do a great job. On top of that, I think we provide a lot of other resources for our kids, extracurricular-wise. We provide a plethora of sporting opportunities, drama, the arts. So overall, I think those are some of the reasons why people want to come here. A lot of kids that are or a lot of families that have special needs kids, they want to come to Anderson Township. And, I always hear, Anderson or Sycamore, Forest Hills or Sycamore. That's what I always hear between the families. So I think we're very fortunate for what we have. We just got to continue to do better.
Thank you, Tom. Patty?
Okay. I think our major strengths are our education. My kids have been going through going through Forest Hills since first grade. And we've had very, very good experiences. They're ready to move into looking for colleges coming up pretty soon. But I have to say that education, at least for my kids, have been pretty good. I don't have complaints about that. Second is really the programs they offer, and really the encouragement in all the buildings. My kids, I've said to them, I don't care what you do, you got to be involved in something, right? It's not just school. You have to be involved in something. It kind of gives you inclusion. It makes you a part of the group. It helps just overall, kids need to be a part of something going on at school. You meet a whole bunch of kids, you get involved, right? And you kind of take a bit of ownership from that. So I think our township does, I should say our school district does a very good job of educating our kids and also providing a lot of opportunities for them to be engaged.
Thank you. Leslie?
I am constantly amazed at the personalized education we get in Forest Hills. We, like these two have echoed, our family moved here for the schools. That personalized education is invaluable. And I know that because I see it every day. With that comes small class sizes. When we have smaller class sizes, teachers are able to spot things related to mental health, things related to learning disabilities, things related to learning in general. And we need to protect and preserve those things. The second thing is the group of teachers and staff that we have in this district. Now, my kids are not in high school, but every single educator I have met in our time here and through this process as well, these people are engaged, they are empowered, and we need to keep protecting that and doing that. Part of that is professional development. You know, I was at the district office not long ago, and there was a group of 30 teachers having a conference on innovative learning, figuring out how to better teach our kids, because guess what? Everyone learns differently, right? And we need to meet those needs. And those are, the emphasis on those two things are, again, invaluable, and we need to make sure we're preserving those.
Thank you. Well, I've been told there's some exciting news happening in the school district this year, in November. There's a levy on the ballot. So why don't we address that? Our third question, and please Leslie begin, and Tom, and then Patty, address the question, are you supporting or are you against this levy in November?
I am absolutely in support of our levy, no question. The district has prolonged the last levy for the last, 7 years now, and they're going to continue to do those things that helped prolong it, so that they don't have to keep coming back over and over and over every 3 years. But the reality is, as I mentioned, we need levies. We are in Ohio. It is just how it is. Without the levy, we're talking about teachers losing their jobs, class sizes getting bigger. I just mentioned why that is so important. Imagine being in a math class with 40 students, and you have a question, and maybe you're a little nervous. I don't want staff members to lose their jobs. As an educator, I can see all of the support pieces that go into making education successful. And when you start to strip those away because we're playing with a levy, then we're going to have some serious problems, not just in education, but with other things as well. Thanks.
Tom, would you like to address that question?
Absolutely, thank you. I am definitely in favor of the levy. I will be voting for it on November the 5th. However, I do believe that it is very important that we do our work to make sure that we don't have to come back to the taxpayers in 2 years or 3 years, and that we look at all of the opportunities and all of the different programs and just do our due diligence, make sure that we can make this money last longer. And I agree that, we need to continue to work with the state funders, the legislators, to see what we can do to, change this mechanism. But it is important that this levy passes, and important for our kids. And the last thing I want to do is take away the opportunities for our kids. I mean, look, I don't think any of us would be here if we didn't care about kids and we didn't care about this community. And so that's where I stand. I will be voting November 5th for the levy, and I can certainly attest that we will be working hard, if I am elected, with our administrators to make sure that we extend the life of this levy. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty?
Okay. I have said I will most likely vote for the levy. The more that time passes, I'm increasingly concerned that our financial situation is more dire than we even anticipated. So yes, I think I will. If you are financially capable of handling the cost of the levy, I would encourage you to vote for it. It comes with a caveat though, and that is please consider carefully who you vote for onto the school board. I very much want our children to receive the education promised to them. We have to be purposeful in deciding how to spend whatever money it is that we have. It's very important.
Thank you, Patty. As a former elected official, I know that when times are good and the budget is flush, there are lots of new things that people would like to do. And so let's assume that the levy passes and there are these resources brought to the community. What one program or service in the school budget, if the levy passes, might you want to add to or create a new program? How would you prioritize the distribution of those funds? Patty?
Okay. So you said that if the levy does pass, what programs or
Correct.
what ads? I don't know that we would add any programs. We would shore up all the programs that we currently offer. I have to say we have to take that money and make sure we shore up paying any debt that we have, covering any potential upcoming facilities. We have only a 0.5 permanent improvement fund. That's not going to cover costs of, I need a new roof, I need a pool, I need, what the air conditioner went down. We have a lot of things that we need to make sure we can cover. God forbid something happens. So if there's extra money, I think I would like to have at Anderson, the stage, everything behind the stage never got an upgrade. I'm not sure Turpin did either. A lot of those parents that are in chorus, band, want to see some kind of upgrade there. They have lights, they have music, things like that need upgrading. Some of the turf needs upgrading. So I think we could spend the money if we had it. I'm not sure we will.
Thank you. Tom?
Could you rephrase that question?
Yes. If the levy passes, there will be more financial resources for the community, for the schools. If you wanted to create a new program or prioritize programs with those resources, what would that look like?
Thank you. I think the most important thing to do is making sure that we pay down the debt. When we went through the bond levy, we did create more debt. So I think if there are extra funds, I believe in paying that debt down is our first priority. Beyond that, if there are dollars left, I think it would be something that I would want to make sure that we sit down with our educators and find out what is best. What's the niche? What is it that kids need? What is it that kids desire? I am not an educator, but I think the most important thing is to rely on the resources that we have. The board is a policy-making board, and part of it is we have a lot of very intelligent folks that create the curriculum. So I would probably sit down with Mr. Sears and say, what do we need? How can we make these kids more successful?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry. Yes, please, Leslie.
Thanks. First I want to clear up a little rumor that's been floating out around there. Being an educator and being fiscally responsible are not mutually exclusive. First and foremost. I don't think we're in a situation necessarily to add programs right now until we can assess our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to our budget and to our classroom on all levels. I like Tom's idea. I'm very pro bring teachers into the conversation. They need a seat at the table. I know our district is doing that, and I'd like to see more of it. As far as paying off debt, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the operations levy can't go towards buildings. So that wouldn't work. It just wouldn't. The state would well, we'd be in a lot of trouble with the state. So that's just unfortunately not how it's going to work. I think prioritizing academics first and then moving down the ladder. And one thing I've been saying from the start of this is starting with administration and all the way down, combing through everything as tight as you can to make sure we didn't miss anything, that we can save where we can save, and then we start looking at everything else. Thanks.
Thank you. Our fifth question is the opposite. Now, let's assume the levy does not pass, and you as board members have to make difficult decisions about where to cut resources and what is the consequence of not having enough resources for the schools. Where would you tend to look for cost savings? Leslie, can you begin?
Well, we know what would happen if the levy fails. 30 teachers, faculty, staff, administrators, support staff, they'll lose their jobs. We will have larger class sizes across the district in all 9 schools. That will happen almost immediately. Nagel Middle School likely would lose its swimming and golf because that was relatively new. Pay to play would go up to, the numbers I've heard have been anywhere from $500 per kid to $700 per kid. With that comes exclusion. You start to exclude families that maybe are not as financially sound as others. And there's a whole wealth of problems. So that's what would be cut. We're at the point where the state is recommending those things. That's a reality. If this levy fails, then the state's going to come in and make the decisions for us. And we're not going to have a say. So that's why it's incredibly important on November 5th that we pass this levy. Thank you.
Patty? Yes.
It's hard with an echo, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Patty.
No.
I can speak up.
No. So like as Leslie said, they said 30 employees, class sizes will increase, student personalization will be reduced, and special programming reductions. Really, if it doesn't pass, we do need to take a hard look at everything we spend money on and make sure the priorities are funded, which is all the court education, right? That has to stay regardless of anything else. It may be special programming, it could be sports, you know, and like you said, class sizes perhaps. But the point is this, you can't spend money you don't have. It pains me that we are at this point that it's dire and that the state could come in and just start making cuts. So it would be advantageous for us to go in and really fund everything that's a priority within our means. And we kind of have to do that fairly quickly. So if this doesn't pass, I think you're going to see it pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 questions from the audience that I'd like to try to bring together.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. I'm leaving you out.
That's okay.
Please, excuse me. Tom, please address the last question.
Thank you. As far as, what cost savings measures would we look at, I think the first thing I would plan to do is sit down with our treasurer, Alana, and with Mr. Prebbles and sit down and look at, you look at the low-hanging fruits, and that would be, what are things that least impact our kids? So that would be the first level. And I understand that we have to go beyond that. We will have to go beyond that. But, let's try to minimize the impact on our kids, our students, because that's important. We don't want to take away the resources. None of us here want to reduce the opportunities for our kids because it's critical. The extracurricular is important, and it's true. The cutting of teachers would be horrific. Making the class sizes larger is not a good thing for our kids. So certainly the first thing would be is let's talk to the folks that are completely engaged and let's learn from them and then create our action plan to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I have 2 questions from the audience that I'd like to try to combine. One is about what you see as your principal role as a member of the school board. And the second part of that question is how do you intend to collaborate with others on the school board to be effective? So first part of that question is, what do you see as your principal role as a member of the school board? And the second part of that is, how do you work with others or collaborate in order to be an effective school board member? And Tom, will you begin? Since you're first this time.
Well, as far as the role, I've sat on the Anderson Park Board, Anderson Park District Board of Park Commissioners for the last 7.5 years. So the board is a policy-making board. So the first thing we do is we make policy and we approve budgets. Those are the three critical things that a board member does. As far as collaboration, you know, to me, I look at myself as a leader in this community, and I love talking and listening to people, and there's nothing more important than having healthy discussion. And from there, that's how we create our action plan to move forward. So collaboration to me is what we've been doing for a long time. When I was the president of the Anderson board, the president of the Anderson Park Board, you know, we actually had collaborative efforts with Anderson Township and with the Forest Hills Board of Education. We met on a quarterly basis just to talk about the things that we're engaged with, what's going on. So collaboration to me is critical as being part of a leadership position.
Thank you. Leslie?
Thanks. Well, a board member is, you know, a policy maker, right? And I think these two questions go hand in hand, because you can't, not one person should have all the power. This shouldn't even be about power. And as far as collaboration, you have to get along with people. One important role I would have on the board is to facilitate mutually beneficial relationships between the board, the various board members, the Forest Hills Teachers Association, Forest Hills Council, and any other partnerships that we have to have. Not primarily, but also at the state level as well, because there's an organized effort there to fight this funding issue. Part of my research is civil discourse. I'm currently working on a documentary about civil discourse in collaboration that will air on PBS next year. Shameful plug, I know. But I love that. I love that, because at the end of the day, even Tom, Patty, and I, we all want the same thing. We just have different ideas for how to get there. And if the three of us sat around for a while, we could probably find some common ground to stand on and then start collaborating and negotiating. That is what I do. That is what communication is about. That is what I teach daily. And get along with people, right? Thanks.
Thank you, Patty.
Okay. So principal role as a board member for me is gaining agreement on the board. There are 5 members. What is our objective? What are we trying to do, right? Which is, we need to provide solid education within our confines, which is mainly our budget. And so we need to come to agreement with that. Collaboration comes in with that as well. How are we going to do it, right? We all agree we've got to get curriculum people in, the teachers in. We've got to get operations people in and figure out the best way to make the solid education within our limited ability. And I know that takes a lot of effort and input from pretty much everybody, because everyone's got a different perspective, but that's what it's going to take.
Thank you, Patty. We're getting some questions that are very, very specific, but we have one that's fairly general in terms of community engagement. I'd like to see how you would address that. A community really, in many respects, is only as strong as the people that are part of that community are willing to be engaged. In terms of the school system, how would you encourage members of our community to become more engaged with our schools? And Patty, could you begin by answering that question? Should I repeat that?
No, you want to know how do we get people more engaged in our community?
Exactly, in our school system in particular. Thank you.
I'll tell you, when my kids went to Summit Elementary, I volunteered in the classroom. The teachers needed copies made. You know, kids can you take this one out there, proctor a test? Can you read to them? Can you do all sorts of things? I mean, it really does. Who's a room mom? It takes a lot of, I mean, I had to manipulate my work schedule to be able to make it happen, but you learn a lot in the classroom. You meet a lot of the kids. It's pretty important to do that. Get involved in the class, just in the school. I was on the PTA. I did pretty much everything that they had at Summit Elementary. I was involved in. I got on the board. You don't have to go that far, but I mean, there are tons of people. There are three kinds of people. People that always step up and do stuff. Some people that never step up, and you got a huge group in between. But I don't think people that don't do it or only do it part-time realize the impact that you have with those kids and in the community. That's what I would say. Get involved. I mean, it's great to see all these people here today. This is what we need.
Okay, Tom?
I think community engagement to me is critical. When my kids started going to Anderson High School, one of the things that I was enamored with is to get involved with our athletic boosters. And I think that, you know, getting involved with your athletic boosters and getting involved with the band boosters and with the PTA, PTOs, I think it's an incredible way just to, one, learn about the schools, learn about what's going on, get an inside look. You'll learn a lot more about the inner workings of the schools, the programs that we offer. It's exciting. So I've always been one who's always liked to be involved in my community. And so I think through that, I would encourage all of you that are out here tonight to get involved with your kids. You know, stay engaged with them so you have a good idea of who their friends are and what they're doing. We have some incredible people that are running, like from athletics to the bands. I mean, our bands are absolutely incredible. And their boosters are always looking for people to help. So just get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's talk about curriculum. I'm sorry. Did I leave you out? Well,
It's
I
okay.
didn't
You're
mean
doing
to
it to
do
all of
that.
us, so it's fine.
So can you go ahead and answer that question?
Can I answer?
I'm sorry. Tom just, Patty answered that question, Tom, and now you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm also a parent volunteer at Maddox. This year I'm going to be doing some volunteer reading training with a second grader, which I'm really excited about. But what I would love to see in terms of getting our community more engaged with our schools is improved external communication. I think if we can have a more concerted effort to connect with the various PTOs and use a variety of different channels to communicate with them to get them more engaged, that's absolutely, it's a soft cost too. It's just one way that we can better communicate with them so that we can sort of inspire them to become more engaged in our schools. At Xavier, where I work, we have a huge initiative on community engaged learning where we try to find mutually beneficial opportunities for our students to work with the community and vice versa. And again, mutually beneficial. And everybody buys into that and becomes more passionate about that. And I would love to see some of those things happen in our district too. And for the record, I don't want to be a board member that sits behind a pretty table once a month. I want to be around the table. I'm ready to go to the schools. Let's talk about social media and all of that stuff. Let's do it. I want to be there doing that. And same thing with this community engaged stuff. I have that expertise and I just want to use it. I want to help and I would love to see more of that in our schools. Thanks.
Thank you. I've tried to bundle a few of the questions together that deal with curriculum. So I'm going to ask you a question about curriculum in general, and maybe you can address specific aspects of the curriculum. So do any of you have any concerns about the current curriculum at the schools? If so, what would you plan to do in terms of addressing those? And specifically, if you could speak to items in the curriculum, including these three special education, mastery learning, and gifted programs.
What were the last two?
If you could speak to the idea of curriculum in general, if you had any ideas or priorities or felt that there were aspects of the curriculum that needed to be changed, improved, or modified, speak to that in general. But in particular, try to address these three programs: special education, mastery learning, and gifted programs.
Master learning.
Mastery learning is how it was described on the question. If you can address these.
And what was the third one again? I'm sorry.
Gifted programs.
Okay.
In an attempt to try to be efficient, I'm merging questions together in order to try to address the audience's concerns in a broader sense. So curriculum is really the topic. If you can address what you think about the current curriculum, that would be helpful. If you can speak to any of those three special programs, that would be good as well. And Leslie, would you please begin?
Sure. Well, in terms of special education, I think we do have work there, work to do there. I read the last Ohio Department of Education report, and it seems like there are even just, again, some soft costs that we can address quickly related to training and following the proper channels to ensure we are meeting the needs of those students. As far as mastery learning and gifted programs, I don't necessarily see any issues with either of those two. What I would like to see, though, is a real emphasis placed on high-impact learning strategies. So we've started to see that in our district already. If you see flexible seating in some of your schools, you know why that's important. Students learn differently, especially in the elementary schools. But even at Xavier, we've moved to flexible seating as well, because it allows us to reconfigure rooms, to do all sorts of different activities, different things that most of us probably grew up with. Community engaged learning is also another high impact learning strategy, and I think we can bring those in quite easily into the curriculum for the mastery and gifted programs. But there's definitely work to do with the special ed situation, and I think that, honestly, I think that's probably one of the first things we need to address, because again, soft costs there, and we can try to fix those quickly. Thanks.
Patty, can you address that question?
Curriculum concerns. I have heard from a lot of people that IEP and the 405 plan some people have a great experience, some people don't. It seems like that is an avenue that we have to actually start to go down and see what is really going on. Some schools do it better, some do not do it at all, and it seems to be causing a lot of frustration. I actually have a sister who's mentally handicapped. She just went through the regular school system. She's actually in a good place. She lives in a group home. She has a minimum wage job, but when we were growing up, she was just part of the family. She went to school with all the rest of us, and when you go out with her, at first, if you look at her, it's not a big deal, but you can tell she's definitely special needs. And I am excited a lot of times. A lot of people go with it now, just because you have a lot of special needs out in public. It's very good for them to be out with all the rest of us. It just helps everybody accept them, and it's just part of life, which is great. About the master or gifted programs, I'm very fortunate. I've got one who is a superstar. She's taken 4 APs. She's taken AP chemistry. I really have no problems with that kind of direction. I think the school offers a lot for kids that are motivated and can handle the higher education. Sorry.
Thank you, Patty. Tom?
Thank you. As far as the general curriculum, I think that our kids, when they graduate from high school, I think our kids are prepared for that next part of life, which is critical. I do think that we do need to put more emphasis on those kids that aren't necessarily going to take the traditional 4-year college education path. I think we need to work a little bit more and improve that, and really make sure that these kids that are going to become the future electricians and plumbers and painters, drywallers, auto mechanics. We just need to make sure that they too are included and part of the community once they're apart from Anderson or Turbine High School. I also really think it's important that these kids have that opportunity to be involved in the extracurriculars. I know that sometimes there's some scheduling conflicts, and the last thing we want is, what we don't want is we don't want these kids to not have that opportunity. And I concur that we do have we have work to do with our special ed program, and we will focus on that if I am elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I wanted to ask our organizers tonight if we have time for one more question. Excellent. Let's get to our 10th question now. It's somewhat controversial, has to do with a cultural issue. So in our society today, we are often debating the names of our sports teams and other icons in our society in regards to what their name implies or could imply, and how it may negatively affect people's perceptions of our community. In terms of the name Redskins, what is your stance on the Redskins mascot controversy? Do you have any opinions, and could you share that with the audience? And Tom, could you go first?
Thank you. Last year was an incredible challenge for this community. I heard lots of discussion on both sides, and it was very emotional to hear both sides, and I would not want to go through that again. It was a very big challenge. So here's how my thought would be is, if the state or federal government comes back to us and tells us that we need to make a change, or the Ohio High School Athletic Association says we no longer can have the Anderson Redskins as our mascot or logo, then I believe that's the time that we need to make the change. Until then, I do think that we need to be empathetic, and we need to make sure that when we're creating spirit wear and we're decorating the school, that we are sensitive to that. And as booster president, one of the things that I have done is I worked with our folks and we created a new booster mascot that was more inclusive. And those are some little things that I think we can do to move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Leslie?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the committee considered, apart from just the public forums that occurred last year. But if I were on the committee, I would need several things in front of me. First, a lot of research, a lot of information instead of emotion, so that we can make a sound decision about this situation. I saw what happened last year as well, and part of wanting to run was not to fight for change for the name, but to bring some civility to the discussion about whether to change the name. For me, this is tied to financial responsibility as well. For example, if we are continuing to put the logo and items like that on permanent structures, then we could very well run into a difficult financial situation if the state comes in and mandates that. For example, Anderson High School is going to need a gym floor in the next couple of years. So if we brandish that with the logo, and then the state comes down and says, guess what? The rest of the United States, we're seeing this cultural shift happen. We're going to have to change it. Then we run into a really nasty financial problem. It's going to be just like how we felt when we found out about the pool situation. So we need to be smart about it and pay attention to what's happening culturally and make the sound decision. Sorry.
Thank you. Patty, would you like to answer that question?
Okay. For me, I don't want to change the name. I went to all the meetings. I went to all the Board of Education meetings that follow that when they have public commentary. We had months and months. I'm not saying both sides don't have merit. I can see both sides have a point. But for me, it's a no. I don't want to go through all those meetings again. I don't know that anything additional can be brought up that wasn't already considered at the time. They have made efforts to actually give like 2 different kinds of spirit wear, so that anybody that didn't want something that had that logo on it could buy something else on it. And you know, the other part is this. Yes, my big thing is the finances. That's what I do every day. I do, you know, with the numbers, and I just go, if we're fighting to have a levy, if we're fighting to have pay just our teachers and keep providing our education, that's what I want to spend the money on. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's address another issue that's been brought up by the audience in terms of teacher compensation. I understand this is probably levy sensitive, but nonetheless, have any of you considered addressing a plan to change the way that teachers are compensated in the school district? And would you begin, Patty?
Okay. I'm actually evaluating, and probably if you're not a teacher, most people are evaluated on a merit-based system. I do like the idea of merit-based because if you're a high performer, which I tend to be, you get financially recognized for your performance. I also understand the process is subjective. The second point I'd like to make is this, though. I've been told by a lot of people they won't vote for me because I want merit pay for teachers. I never said I was going to change the state of Ohio evaluation model. I just made a comment that I do like the idea of merit. It seems someone twisted my words. The most concerning part, however, is that some teachers are not taking the time to find the truth about my statements. It makes me a bit nervous thinking that an educational institution has teachers willing to take second, third, and fourth hand hearsay as truth, and not bother to learn the truth from the source. I am not changing the teacher's compensation model. I want my children to be taught to look for the truth before acting. Can you imagine someone on the Board of Education that makes decisions based on what somebody else told them instead of taking the time to learn before acting? So no, I'm not changing the compensation model.
Thank you. Tom?
Yes, thank you. I too have no desire to change the way teachers are compensated. You know, I work in the private sector, and it's very difficult to do performance evaluations in that manner. Even though you are given goals and objectives, it's, you know, there are challenges that people face every day. And I know that teachers have a lot of challenges within the classroom, and there's no fair weighing mechanism to even consider any type of merit-based pay or anything like that. So I think that teachers do an incredible job here in our district, and we need to continue to support them in every way that we can. So no desire to make any changes there. Thank you.
Leslie?
Well, first of all, I think our teachers are very well equipped to comprehend the written word of folks. So it is what it is, friends. Merit-based pay does not work in education, and we don't want to hear about it. If you understand education, you know that that is the truth. It's that simple. You have subgroups that you have to consider as part of that. There are all sorts of assessments that teachers are doing day in, day out. And by the way, I am a teacher, as I mentioned, and I am evaluated, and so are the teachers in our district. It's just not directly tied to that compensation piece because we have all sorts of methods of assessment. We don't just look at one data point, and I think anybody who is going to be on that board and is going to be concerned about finances needs to understand that we can't look at one data point to make decisions. And that's really what merit-based pay is looking at. So thank you. No, that's a no for me as well. Thanks.
All right, let's shift a little bit. We can get back to more specific questions, but here's a good one. I think it's a more generalized question about your role on the board. If you're elected to the school board, what do you think is the biggest challenge you'll be facing? And can we begin with Leslie?
I think the biggest challenge facing our district over the next decade is this levy, whether it passes or fails. That's what it boils down to for me. we don't pass it, we're in a lot of trouble. We do pass it, we really need to be paying attention to how we're allocating those funds and what we're doing. We need to be working together. We need people on the board who are not burning bridges with each other, people who can collaborate and talk and find common ground so that we can actually negotiate and compromise effectively. Now, if we don't pass that levy, the state's gonna come in and we're gonna be up a creek really fast. And my kid is gonna feel that for the next 10 years, and so is everyone else's. So for me, that's what I view as the most difficult challenge facing us right now.
Thank you. Patty?
The most difficult challenge, I would agree, are the finances, because that's how everything is going to operate. If we have money to run, we're going to do it. And if we don't, then we got to start making some serious decisions on what we're going to keep and what we don't. So, yep, it's a big decision. But you know, the other part is this: we have to start positioning. We have to be proactive in positioning ourselves, so we're not always having to do this. If we need something, we need to start getting it out there and doing it well in advance, so that we're not at a place where it's dire. So that's what I want to do, is be a proactive board.
Thank you. Tom?
So I think that, you know, the biggest challenge is going to be just taking the opportunity to learn and listen. None of us have sat on a board of education. So I think that there is going to be a learning curve that we will all have to deal with. But it's just spending the time and asking the questions and just digging in. I think that's important to take that time. But beyond the finances, which I think we all have to agree, that's an important part of what we're all here for. But just taking the time, learn as much as you can, ask the questions, because none of us have all the answers. There's no way that we have those answers. So that's the biggest challenge I see, is just learning, taking the time to learn. It takes time.
Okay, thank you. We have a question I think is quite interesting in terms of the median. So often school districts spend a great deal of resources both on students who are considered more gifted and also on students that need more help to manage the school process, the education process. So how do we then ensure that we don't lose track of the students that are sort of in the middle between the gifted programs and the extra learning requirement programs? How do we emphasize the welfare of those students? Perhaps you could address that, Tom?
Sure. I think the most important part is making sure that we continue to have sustainable engagement for our kids. It's the kids in the middle are the ones that get lost. So, you know, let's create different clubs and activities and things for them to get involved socially. I just think that if you become disengaged socially within your school, it's harder to be a part of that community. So let's make sure that we continue to allow them and grow with them and give them the ability to be part of the school organization. And if we do that, I think the people in the middle will move to one side or another more so. But it's important, just engagement, being involved. And I think that's very critical today in this society that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie?
Yeah, I think we are seeing some examples of what our teachers are doing right now to focus on the middle and also both sides of the spectrum or the continuum. For example, at Maddox right now, they are assessing and breaking up students in first grade based on their math ability. So they're able to then break them up by groups with different teachers so that they can practice and be with the same peer group that's at their level. And that is a high impact learning strategy. And we need to see more of those in our schools. And I have every confidence that our teachers want to do that. As I mentioned, when I was at the district office, there were 30 in the basement room talking about ways to create innovative learning strategies. And I think that's what you have to do. You start to, group them based on their abilities and get that focused learning, that personalized learning that we keep talking about, that we're able to do in our district because we have smaller class sizes. I think that's really where the focus is. It's on those high impact learning strategies. Keep pushing that right direction, and we're going to get those kids in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Patty?
For me, and it could be like for you guys, I got two very, very different kids. So what I've done is I get involved in their schedules. What are their classes? What are they doing? I go every single year to the counselor, and I've got from 8th grade on, their 5-year plan to make sure that they end up where they want to be at the end of their high school career. And every year, we discuss what's going on with them. Are they appropriately positioned? We talk with a counselor, get a lot of that input. So for me, it's really get involved with your kids. You know them more. What can they do? What do you need to push them on? What do you kind of need to kind of back off on, right? Because they have to get through the classes. You can't be taking all the right classes, all the hard classes. So get to know your kids, meet with a counselor, know what areas you need pushing. And then lots of times I've talked to the teachers, and said, hey, I kind of think one needs this or that, and they can help regulate that as well. I have found that very helpful and productive for us.
Thank you, Patty. Often school board members, elected officials in general, have to deal with very controversial and very difficult issues. And all of you spoke to this idea of the Redskins mascot. And there is a lot of controversy and strong feelings around issues such as that. And how school board members react can do a lot to affect the prestige and perspective of how people feel about a community. Let's take another issue that our society is working with right now, transgender students. How would you address the needs of transgender students in the school district? And Patty, could you begin by addressing that?
I don't know much about it. I know that it's out there. I do not know what the state and federal laws require. Whatever that would be, we would certainly comply. I'm really not sure. I will have to think about that and what are we supposed to do as a school district and as a board? Because we do need, there are a lot of issues out there, I get that. We just need to do the best that we can to accommodate as many people as we can.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Tom?
Well, I think this issue is coming up more and more so as time continues to go by. I believe that you've got to look at everything on a case-by-case scenario, and look at what is in the best interest of that student. And there is no right or wrong answer. A lot of it is going to be how are we going to address this in the future, and what is going to put our student in the best possible position. And again, a case-by-case scenario is probably the best way to manage it. I believe that's how it's actually managed today. And so that's how I think that we should continue to move forward with. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Leslie?
Well, this is a great question, by the way, whoever wrote it. Our 5-year plan, or our strategic plan, says that we are focusing on inclusiveness. That means we have to create supportive environments for everyone in our district, regardless of socioeconomic status, race, gender, and the like. Now, I teach at a Catholic university, a Catholic Jesuit university, where we focus on the whole person and inclusiveness, regardless of difference. And one of the ways we have tried to address this on our campus is by, you know, it always comes down to the bathroom, it seems, when we're talking about this. Guess what? Take one bathroom, put a different sign on it, and have it say gender neutral bathroom. It's that simple. The issue itself is starting to hear frequently about this is bathrooms. That's what we've done at Xavier. Like Patty, I don't know what the state regulation is, but I know that we probably are meeting exactly what it is, but our actions have got to match our values. And if our values and our strategic plan are that we're going to be inclusive, then we have to be inclusive, and we have to take action to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. All right, our 14th question tonight, which is far beyond where we thought we would get when we were planning this out in terms of time. So this has been pretty efficient. Thank you for your very efficient responses tonight on these questions. Let's talk about skills that you specifically bring to the school board. Now, the school board is a team. So usually on a team, there are people that have some skills in some areas and others that have less skills. And you'd think that the team would work together for the best interest of the community. So can you please address what unique skills or capabilities that you would bring to the school board that you think are really important? And Leslie, would you begin?
Sure. Well, first of all, I am an educator. So we only have one educator currently on the board, Dee Dee Choice. Now, I'm all for a balanced board, and I'm all for different perspectives, because that's how we're going to achieve greatness. I really believe that. Dee Dee is only one person, though, and I would like to sit right next to her and be able to say, this is what education is about, and we need to have a strong voice that is able to preserve those things that make us special. And you're not going to get that from anyone else on here. Like I said, I've been the boots on the ground for the last 13 or 14 years. Beyond that, everything I do in communication is collaborative, whether it's in the classroom or whether it is researching on a project. And definitely if it's running statistics, the more brains, the better on that one. We have to get along with each other. I'm all about that. I'm turn on a funny song and let's smile and take a break if we need to, and then come back to the drawing board. There is a space for civil discourse, and conflict does not have to be a negative thing. It doesn't. It can be a positive thing if we can get to this place of collaboration, and I live and breathe that every day.
Thank you. Patty?
Big part of it too. So when I have a question or a problem to solve, I research, I ask questions from subject matter experts, and I deliberate and identify a path for solutions, or more than one possible solution. So once I have a possible potential solution, I want to hear from the other board members. They should be doing the same things. That's what this 5-member team is supposed to do. And then we can generate discussion and pick the most appropriate solution for implementation. I want the other board members to be as committed to the research process that I plan to be. I don't know all the answers, but my job is to provide solutions. Our team is supposed to provide solutions. I will educate myself on the subject to make the best informed decisions that I can. I do this in my regular profession as well. When I meet with my boss or a team for a particular reason, I recap the situation. That's what I like to do. I go, this is what our problem is, recap it, present possible avenues of resolution, and then we can all decide, based on all of our research, how to best solve that particular issue.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. I bring 25 years of professional experience to the table working with communities throughout the greater Cincinnati area. I negotiate contracts with communities for solid waste collection. Collaboration is a big part of what I do. We negotiate, we discuss, and I think those are some of the traits that I bring to the board as far as collaboration, having the ability to communicate and communicate effectively. As part of that, I also have served on a government board. I was appointed to the Anderson Board of Park Commissioners 7.5 years ago. So collaboration and working with the board, with your constituents, working with community members is something that we've always done. So I think that those are some skills that I bring to the table, because working on a board, on a government type board, it's not like working on the PTA. There's a lot more involved. There's the Ohio Revised Code. There's the state of Ohio Board of Education. There's so many different regulations. And so those are just some of the things that I would bring to the table as far as my skills, my ability to communicate, my ability to strengthen relationships. And I truly believe in civil discourse and just, again, always having in mind our kids and our community, and also being fiscally responsible.
Thank you, Tom. All right, I've been asked to make another question before closing remarks. So I'm going to ask you a question that I noticed on the way in tonight that I was a little surprised about. Is soccer not supported at the middle school here? I saw football pictures, but no soccer. Well, why is that? I mean, there's a growing interest in soccer in the United States in general. Why doesn't the school have a soccer team? Do you know anything about that? Could you take turns answering that question for me? Sure, Tom, would you like to go first?
Soccer, obviously here in the greater Cincinnati, with what we have going with the MLS, is just growing and booming. It's a great sport. Me being an Italian, my parents immigrated from Italy, so soccer's always been a big part of our lives. Viva Italia. But, you know, I know in the high school levels we have some amazing high school soccer programs, both at Anderson and Turpin, so we're fortunate. In the middle school, I think that there's just so many clubs that are involved today. You've got probably 3 or 4 big clubs, and I just don't think that it's something that has been thought about in the past, but it would be something to look at. The one thing you have to watch out for with the Ohio High School Athletic Association is sometimes if you play club soccer and then you play for your school, you've got some number of kids that can play on those teams that can kind of be conflicting. So I would be supportive of at least listening to what the cost would be to bring in a soccer program, if that's what people want to do. I know that recently Nagel brought on the swimming, and swimming is a big sport in the high schools, and I believe that lacrosse is something that I think it was just added last year for the boys. So I would think the girls lacrosse will probably next. And again, great sports. So absolutely, something to consider and discuss.
Thank you, Tom. Leslie, you have any comments on my question?
I do. Yo soy Latina también. And soccer was a big old deal growing up with me in South Texas. I'm very athletic, if you can't tell. But I don't know the answer to this question, but I have wondered that maybe it's just a regional thing, because where I'm from in South Texas, we had soccer, but we did not have swimming. There was very minimal swimming, which, it's hot there. We should have that year-round. I don't know why we don't. But I just thought maybe that was why, because coming to Cincinnati especially, we have just been inundated with swimming and swimming and swimming. And so I just thought maybe that's just a bigger sport here. But that's a great question. And Tom gave some really good info about the Athletic Association and how that works. I didn't think about that either. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a good one.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Patty, do you have any comments on my question about soccer?
Well, my girls and my husband have played soccer since they could kick a ball. So our whole path has been, the Southeast Soccer Association, which is super easy. A lot of kids can do it super cheap. Gobs of kids are in that, and it's a lot of fun. We grew up with that. My husband had been a coach for years and years and years. Then we went into club, so I kind of think that's what's really going on here is in middle school, if you're playing soccer, you're in club. Then when you get to high school, that's where you have to kind of pick what path do you want to go on. So That's why I don't think we have it here. I think it would be very tough. Plus, a lot of the other middle schools have the same problem. A lot of teams are in clubs. Who's going to play?
Interestingly, we're finding out at the university level that by having these other sports programs such as lacrosse, rugby, in fact, my youngest son attended university on a scholarship for fencing, and fencing is actually a very, very big sport in Cincinnati. And these sports allow people that otherwise wouldn't engage in mainstream sports activities to have a sport that they can get involved in. But not only that, they act as safety nets for students who aren't people that are not going to be able to play a lot in the football program, for instance. They can still participate in other kinds of sports on campus that require, that kind of athleticism. So it's an interesting question. I just noticed the pictures on the walk-in that I didn't see a soccer team. So, and knowing how popular soccer is here in Cincinnati, I thought it'd be an interesting way just to engage in something different tonight. All right, we're moving to closing remarks, and each candidate will have a specific amount of time for the closing remarks, 2 minutes. Our timer will keep track of that. And the order of the closing remarks will be Tom, Leslie, and then Patty. So Tom, would you like to go ahead and proceed with your closing remarks?
Absolutely. First off, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. Give yourselves a round of applause. This is incredible. We had a great crowd. So please, this is what community engagement is about. Come out, listen to your candidates, learn, educate yourselves. This is what makes me proud to live in the Anderson Township, Newtown community. Thank you for coming. It's important that you're here, and I'm glad you're here tonight. Running for office is an incredible experience. I never ever thought that this would be as challenging as it is. But along the way, I've met many, many great people, and I am very thankful for that. And I thank each of you for coming out. It really warms my heart to see that people really care about what's going on. It's important. For me, there's nothing better than a cause related to kids. Being on a school board is all about the kids. It's about the kids. It's about this great community that we live in. And it's about making sure that we provide our kids the greatest opportunities to be successful in life. That's what we're here for. I believe all three of us have that intention and desire. There's no doubt. If you choose to vote on November 5th for me, or if you've already cast your ballot, I thank you. I thank all of you for coming out. My focus will always be student-focused, community-driven, and fiscally responsible. When I make decisions on this board, if I'm elected on November 5th, that's the path I will follow, and that's the path I will continue to follow. I thank you very much for coming out. Appreciate your support.
Thank you, Tom. Leslie?
For the last couple of years, I have felt a very strong desire to just do something to help my community. We've made Anderson our home, and I volunteer at my daughter's school. I've worked with the Cincinnati Public Library System and taught in their summer writing program a few times. And with that, it's ages 8 through 17. We moved here because of the schools. We did. And I thought my background and skill set would be useful on this board. Our district is facing somewhat of a unique situation at the moment. And I want to do everything I can to support our vision of ensuring success for all students. I want to make sure we're empowering each student and empowering our teachers and our staff so that they can achieve those things. I want to preserve and protect and encourage high-impact learning strategies. And I don't throw those words around. I actually know what they mean. I'm focused on doing the same in my classroom. My main areas of focus are financially managing operations, advocating at the state level, whatever shape that takes. Mike, be ready for some weekends. I want to preserve the things that make Forest Hills special. I love that personalized learning. That is absolutely what makes a difference in a kid's life, day to day. I want to improve external communication and work with our new communication person to help rebuild and regain trust, to pull back the curtain at the administrative office and show the stories and tell the community what we're doing. And I want to conclude by saying, please remember that being an educator and being fiscally responsible is not mutually exclusive. You can, in fact, be both of those things. I'm the only candidate up here in education, and I hope that on November 5th you remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Patty?
Thank you for attending tonight, and Tom is right. This is actually a very good crowd for a school-related meeting, so thank you for that. Please consider voting for me, though, for the following reasons: to provide a quality education within our financial means, to bring transparency and a lot of communication to our district, to strengthen our community by focusing on the common goals, which is education. We're all sitting here because of the education. Let's leave hearsay and unverified conclusions alone and focus on truth and integrity. We're teaching our children important behavior lessons, and I want mine to see that I stand for a strong education, am financially responsible, am honest, and I focus on the goals, not the gossip. I know when I watch the nightly news, I am dismayed to see what is going on. And I believe some of that ugliness has come to Anderson Township, and I would like our township to prove to be different than that. That we don't follow suit, but we can be better than that and work honestly for improvements that benefit the whole community. That may seem idealistic to you, but it really can be done. We can be better if we choose to be honest but respectful of each other's opinions. It takes a stronger person to do the right thing, to be honest and to be humble and to be respectful. Please, again, consider what is your priority here and who can meet your priority. You should always at least strive to have one strong financial person with children in this district on the board for every term. It's just a smart move, and I would appreciate any vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. And I'd like to again express appreciation that all of you are making yourselves available for leadership positions in the community. It's a sacrifice, and we appreciate your willingness to do so. Thank you for answering our questions and being patient with my less than numerical superiority tonight at times. Thank you.
So in closing, Forest Hills Council would like to thank everyone for your attendance. We really appreciate that all of you took the time to come out. As everyone has said, we would like to thank all three of our candidates for participating. We would also like to thank our moderator, Dr. J.T. Spence, for running the questions this evening. If there were any questions that you had that were not answered tonight, please feel free to contact the candidates directly. Don't forget to vote on November 5th, and please support our schools as you cast that vote. Thank you.